This was this morning's project, so we'll call this a end of series treat. This was not meant to be its own series, but as I was doing the table saw, I kept looking online and I found this radial arm saw, and I'll do a walk around. But today was replacing the original stand, which is, huge tripod or trapezoid looking thing, and side to side on these edges is 22 inches, and the original stand goes out to 33. So 33 inches maneuvering in the garage is just too tight. So I decided to stick with Wen, because I've got a couple of Wen solutions. That's what I did on the table saw with the base, where you just hit the bottom foot pedal down there, and everything becomes extremely mobile and easy to maneuver. But that was this morning. So assembling the stand and then mounting the radial arm saw frame and such. Now I'll do a little bit of a close-up walk around. All right, this was built in the early 90s, as you can see from the pull to in fact, my Craftsman table saw had this, and I lost one of these, and these are online for like $10 each, but there's somebody printing them in 3D printing for, like 5 for 20 bucks or something, which when you lose those suck, because I leave this out of my saw, so it can't accidentally be turned on, or at least I did on my table saw. But if you look at this, now that it's all cleaned up, this thing is in pristine condition, almost brand new, literally. There was very little rust on it, some surface rust, some screw, minor stuff. I took things off and dumped them in evaporust. Haven't done anything here other than a little WD-40. Refinished this with the wire wheel, took everything apart, dusted it out, cleaned it off, re-oiled the glides, took this off, polished it, cleaned everything. This was all taken apart, and the pieces that were kind of rusty were soaked in evaporust, and again, things taken apart, cleaned. When you look at the condition of the plastic, it's it's really in great shape. And this is a post recall model, because it has this particular guard on it. I've taken the blade off for now. Blade was in great shape. Looks like it's hardly ever used, and I think it's the original blade, but everything works in terms of rotating for either a rip cut or a cross cut, including pulling up the miter and adjusting the miter at different degrees or angles. And this particular stand is a miter saw, meant for miter saw, so I thought it would be great, because I will not, these extend both up and out. So when I remake the saw table, I will take it out to here, and then I will take it out to just to here or slightly less, so that I can use these as my extension, so I don't have to have this wide, huge table that was originally on it. In fact, I'll put the piece of wood, one of the pieces of wood that was on it, so you can get an idea of the footprint. Absolutely huge. But and then there's a little shelf down here for miscellaneous stuffage that I think can hold like 50 pounds. Did the same thing back here as I did on the table saw, with a cable holder, as well as the tools to do the blade. Again, the only thing that I'm going to have to focus on is potentially taking these off and soaking them in evaporust, maybe not. And then obviously adjustment. I've read that these are just a bear to adjust, but I mean, it's just an amazing condition. It looks literally brand new, other than being old. Brand new in the sense that you know, it wasn't abused or dinged up or left outside or whatever. Rotates up and down correctly. Polished wire brush, took the rust off that. Again, it just came out really, really nice. I'm happy with it. And maybe take these out and evaporust them. But again, now that it's on a stand and it's mobile, it's much easier to move around in the garage than what I had before. So, and this is the huge original tabletop, which again I will cut to basically the width of the stand, and then I have not decided how far up front I'm gonna trim that, but it will not be that big because I have other means of stabilizing big pieces of wood, and having a huge tabletop is not where I want to go with this. So I think the final update will be whatever I do, and I'll probably do the same thing, 3-piece. Actually, I don't know if I'll do a 2-piece, a rear table and then a fence and then a front table. People do 3 sections plus the fence, so this is actually a 4-section tabletop. Don't know if I'm going to do that, and I will probably cover the rear, so I'll do a walk around of this as well. See how far out this goes. So I'll probably take it to right about here so that I have something to bolt into, but not much farther out than that. And again, this was a 4-section that's not bolted rear table, top table rather, and then the rear table, I don't like the fact that this is exposed, so whatever I do here, I'll probably have a cutout for this, and then I will cover this with something, because that's just that's a dust collector. But it's a big table, huge table, too big for what I want. So when these come up and out, in fact they come out a lot farther than the table itself. I don't know if they come up as high. Yes, they do. So that's a win. So my mechanical solution will work better than this big chunk of wood. Good evening, YouTubers. Tonight's video is going to be a process of turning this radial arm saw into a version of the laser track that Sears Craftsman sold. But this particular model is not a laser track or laser tack, whatever it's called. But this is very similar to what that involves. So we will move this to the driveway and install this and do the first test cut to see how how accurate I have adjusted the blade in terms of being level, vertical level, so whatever the right term is. And then we'll install this, and we'll just do a light cut, not even a cut through, probably just a line to see how straight the blade is and how accurate this particular radial arm saw laser guide by Ashlun is. And I think there's a couple videos on YouTube on this, but just as an aside, the front table, the top table, the 4-piece table is done, and it'll look a little better, more complete in the full frame when I move this out to the driveway. But it's a lot shorter. It's 23 inches wide, which doesn't leave a whole lot of space here for cutting, as opposed to placing wood here. But these rollers make all the difference, and it's a very tight package for the garage. So I'll pop the guide off, and we will get to installing the Ashlun shortly. All right, so I would call the build complete. The table was cut last night, and those cuts, those 1, 2, 3, 4, total of 5 cuts were all done on the 49-year-old table saw. So I thought it was just that we would initiate this saw, or its first project would be the rip fence for the table saw. So each saw doing work for the other saw. But today we are going to install that laser guide. So this is what it looks like in its complete tight form, 23 inches wide, about 27 inches deep on a mobile stand, and very compact as opposed to what it used to be. And I'll move the camera over and we'll do the laser guide. So hopefully this would be as easy as removing this and doing a little rotation and lift. And you won't be able to see it, but the blade is close to level on with the table. And when I said the build was done, that meant that there's still fine-tuning to do. And I'm doing this left-handed. Hate doing stuff left-handed. Alright, so according to the instructions, this is a replace that with this label on the outside. Snug that. That's not going anywhere. And I will put the guide back on, or the safety. That's all back in place. Forgot to mention this is the original rip fence, and I may still play with final alignment to check where the rip fence needs to actually sit based on my table dimensions, and the fact that I probably adjusted this differently than the previous owner. So this will stay the same. One of these may change. Maybe grow this one, shrink this one, I don't know. It depends on where the I don't know if this will open. Well, I've got it locked, so let me unlock it. I would say it depends on where we're at with and I did the yoke, where we're at with tilting that. You can see I'm hitting the wood there because we need to make that first cut. All right, so we will take this wood. We've got naturally the fucking camera's in the way, of course, because that's the way it goes. But let me move this back. You can see that I've adjusted that to the equivalent of having a wider table. So we're going to put a straight line on here. Alright, so I'm going to use the laser. I'm going to put the laser right on top of the line and see if it cuts to the right or left, or if it cuts right on the line. And I will make sure that that's stable. Alright, so we're going to cut this first line through there, and then we're going to cut that. So I'll make the first cut through the fence. After I plug in power. All right, so we'll fire it up and get to listen to it. I think it sounds great. We got our laser line, and we're gonna initiate the rip fence. All right, so now let's go to town on that line and see where it comes. So that's Murphy's Law in action. Nice cut. I don't know that I'm 100% straight yet, so I will call this more adjusting. But what I should have done is drawn the line down the wood to see exactly how much right or left, because cutting dead center, having the laser dead center, did just that. It cut the line. So I'll probably experiment with a couple of cuts of in front of the line or after the line after I do this, because I want to see exactly where it's cutting that line. So let's unlock it again. All right, so being right on top of the line actually cuts in front of the line. So I think we're good there, because maybe I should have done it on that side too. I'll do one more. So I'll do another one of these on both sides so I can ensure that I'm slicing correctly front to back. All right, so same thing. Line, line, line. So when I have the laser right on the center of the line, it looks like it cuts in front of the line. So it's right on the line, it takes the line out and cuts right there. So let's see what this looks like. All right, so there's my line, there's my cut, and there's my line. So I'm going to say we're getting straight cuts, because that's a straight edge. Straight edge gave me that, and I'm going to call the laser, what was it called? Laser light? Laser, whatever the laser tracking thing is, I'm going to call that a success. And the next project will be probably making the rip fence. I do plan on making something to cover that, because that's just going to be a dust collector. So I'll probably do a small piece of something or other in there. Save that for the next mini project. But I'll call this a success. Yeah, this rocks. I'm quite impressed with how it came out. Good stuff for an old machine that they don't make anymore. It does pretty cool things. All right, so for a miter, which you probably can't see, there's your miter angles, and I have 3 stops set. I have it set to 45 degrees, so you can do 60, 45, 30, depending on, you know, what kind of work you do. That's 0, and then 45 in the other direction. And that was tight when I first started playing with it. You can adjust a lot of things, and then that locks the miter back in. You've got a yoke. Actually, what's the best way to, let me move the camera. So I'm going to adjust how this turns so that you can actually rip wood. And I think if I do it from here, so you can turn this in different directions, and because I have it locked so far back, so you can have that rip. Other direction as well. And this is where I was talking about lining the fence up. So my rear, this fence actually needs to come back about 3 inches. So I will move that back. Again, this was first attempt. This is going to get a chuck so that you can attach accessories like a drum sander, routing bits. They make a planer, so a whole bunch of things that you can attach here, which I think is quite cool, because you may ask yourself, well, how can you do that? Well, you can flip it around, and I think the best way to do that is to, where am I at? I can't do things left-handed. Left hand just does not work. So there's a yoke on the other side that when you loosen that, you can flip this. You can flip this. There we go. You can flip this all the way down. Is that going to clear? So when you take this and the blade off, the way I just rotated it, like this, you can rotate it 180 degrees in the other direction so that is down here. And I think that's cool. That adds, here's the yoke I was talking about to lock that. I think that adds an incredible amount of functionality to something that just a unique piece of hardware, in my opinion. Good stuff. All right, this will probably be the last segment of this single series about the radial arm saw. I cut the, what I would call the cover pieces, ran out of, and I used the original, one of the original boards, ran out of my favorite coating, so that should be here later today. So I will add the final coat of that, so that covers that whole area, so we don't get a whole bunch of sawdust in there, which has been happening. Added a, which you can't see, added a dust enhancement device, some tubing I had laying around the house. So hopefully we'll see how that works, because I also added, what is this? 1/8 of an inch. God, what's this stuff called? I can't remember what it's called. But I did that so that, and I put screws and not bolts, but flywheel kind of things, so that this is the interchangeable top that will take my kerf cut as opposed to the press board. So this particular material We're going to put a kerf cut in here right now. I'll set this up in a second after I go over a couple more options that I picked up that hopefully make things a little easier to use. So picked up a couple of 5-gallon containers that fit underneath the shelf, and they'll hold miscellaneous stuff. Like there's the dado blade that I used to cut the different dados, the 2 different size dados on these underside dust protectors. And I also picked up an old molding set. Have one of these for the table saw as well. And this is pretty cool because I talked about this. This drill chuck, 1/2-inch drill chuck, goes on the other side of the saw. And let me move. It's probably based on how low the blade is. Actually, let me see if I can move this around. Camera is always in the way. It's always in front. And the saw is locked back, so hang on one moment, please. I keep it in the locked position so as not to have any surprises or minimize my surprises. All right, so this chuck goes right here. And then you could put things like a drum sander, a drill attached drum sander, other bits, and again you can rotate this head down so that instead of holding it like this, you can use the bench as your tabletop. So I thought that was a nice element of flexibility for adding value to the saw. All right, kerf cut time, back in a minute. All right, so we will lower the saw just enough to put the kerf cut in this brown, whatever this material is called. So we'll need to do the cut in the fence first. And let me go ahead and plug things in. And this will probably be a multi-step process to lower and continue to lower this because I don't want to cut through this. That's the goal. There's the kerf. Let me lock it back because the driveway's at an angle. All right, we now have a kerf, and can't tell how much actually came out there. Saw doesn't look as dusty as it normally would from previous use, so I'm going to assume that worked. But we now have a kerf, and this is done. End of this.